all of us have had to get used to at least some empty shelves in the shops. So is that Christmas dinner safe? Let's ask Ian Wright, Chief Executive of the Food and Drink Federation. Mr. Wright, the Wine and Spirits Association, in a letter signed by 49 firms, wrote to the Transport Secretary this week, warning that delivery chaos could impact people's Christmas. How likely do you think that is?
Well, good morning, Trevor. I think the crucial word there is could. There are all sorts of variables as we approach the last few weeks running up to Christmas. And one of them has just been introduced in the last 24 hours, and it's the one that you've been talking about for most of the morning. I think the new variant and what impact that will have on the supply chain. But I think at the moment what we're seeing is a series of shortages driven by on shelf and on menus in pubs and restaurants around the country. Many of your viewers will have noticed the disappearance of specials boards on restaurant menus. And I think all of those shortages are caused by real tightness in the labour market and by some international factors to do with the global supply chains. All of those are being worked around, as the chief executive of Lidl told us this week. It's increasingly hard to work around all the problems, but many of them can be solved. And I think at the moment, you could look forward to your Christmas goose, rather exotic, if I may say so, with some appreciation and some hope.
Well, I am absolutely reassured about that. Thank you very much. I don't think it's that exotic, but maybe I'm a bit too European these days. What about the veg, spuds, and particularly the wine and brandy for pudding?
Well, I think the Wine and Spirits Trade Association, the experts in this area, are making an important point, which is that some particular sectors have difficulties that others are not enjoying. So I think most of your vegetables will be relatively safe. And of course, in the next few weeks, we will undoubtedly hear about individual areas of shortage. The issue here is that these shortages can be random. They can be very quick to occur. They may often not be about supply itself, but they may be about the ability to move the product. And the key thing for us is that we've got this really serious difficulty in the labour market, which means that for some people, it's almost impossible to bring in staff to manage their Christmas bulge, as it were. So I know of one firm, which I was talking to on Friday, where they're 40 workers short on a working population of 120. That means their shifts are really, really tight. They can't get everybody they need to do the work. And as a consequence, they're losing £500,000 a month in orders. Now, at a time of increasingly high inflation and a lot of uncertainty in the supply chain, that's a worry. And I think one of the concerns I would have, Trevor, is not just about Christmas, but about some of the problems that are being stored up for the weeks after Christmas in terms of high inflation in wage costs and in terms of the viability of some businesses depending on their ability to trade through Christmas.
You're quite right to take me to task for wanging on about Christmas, because actually the real question here is this a temporary or, according to the Bank of England, a transitory event? Or do you think that we have now started to build in higher labour costs and higher inflation for the foreseeable future?
Yes, I do. And I also think that this disruption is permanent. So long as we have a situation where there aren't enough people to do the jobs we have. And incidentally, we did a piece of work about 8 weeks ago, which showed us that of the 4 million jobs in the food supply chain from farm to fork, about 500,000 of them are not filled. So that's 1 in 8 of the jobs in food and drink from the farm right the way through manufacturing, retail and hospitality are not filled. And that's about half the vacancies in the UK workforce. Now, as long as those people aren't there, there will be impacts. One of those impacts will be disruption in supply, and it depends where in the supply chain people can't get labour to do the work that's necessary. And one of those impacts will be wage inflation as people compete for the workforce that is available, and that will have the long-term impact on inflation in the UK economy. And there are other pressures there too. There are very significant commodity price increases. We all know about the gas price and other fuel price increases. So that world food inflation at the moment, according to two UN organisations, is running at 20% per year. There was a study in agriculture in the UK last week that showed that agricultural inflation was over 30%. Now, these are scary figures. They won't all feed through to the retail prices index because there are lots of other mitigations, but they are a concern and they are for the long term, as is this disruption.
Ian Wright, thank you very much indeed.